So I want to talk about postmodernism, because that's kind of the stigma. I don't mean it in a negative way, but it's almost become cliche to associate Rav Shagar with postmodernism. I want to define two words with you, Levi. One is existentialism, and the second is postmodernism. And I want to I guess I'll just begin myself, and then you can bring in your own thoughts. For me, to talk about Rav Shagar only as a postmodernist is to lose some of the greatness of what he's doing with postmodernism. Existentialism, for Rav Shagar, Kiyumi he uses in Hebrew, is the search for individual, authentic meaning in what you're doing things because you want to do them, not because other people want you to do them, searching your inner truth. And he'll quote a lot of Jean-Paul Sartre, Rabbi Nachman. Rav Kook is definitely an existentialist for Rav Shagar, and that's a huge part of Rav Shagar's thinking about doing things because you believe in them, because you want to do them, because they represent who you are and not just you're forced. So on one hand, you've got that very strong existential phase in Rav Shagar's thinking, and I think personally, like the whole New Age movement of spirituality today is obsessed with that, doing things, not because other people told you, don't control me, I want to do it because of myself, and that's very powerful. And I actually think that's everywhere in the religious world today, not just in Rav Shagar's thinking. But what makes Rav Shagar unique is the second phase, which is this postmodernism. And I guess I want to I'll let you speak about that. How does Rav Shagar add to existential, spiritual, individual meaning? Why is postmodernism important? I don't think it's detached. I think it's deeply connected. But why is that important that he adds postmodernism to that conversation?
Well, for Rav Shagar, the difference between existentialism and postmodernism on a practical level is mostly about how dramatic you have to be to believe in yourself. That he lays out explicitly in the first essay in Luchot, Luchot, is translated in the Magid volume as Living with Nothingness. And he says the existentialists, believe in subjective truth in the absence of objective truth. They're, really struggling with the fact that there's no objective truth, and they cling on to subjective truth, and it's this whole drama. And that for the postmodernists, Rav Shagar says that they don't even you don't have to bother with the question of is there or is there not objective truth. And you don't have to feel bothered by that fact. That subjective truth is really all there is. And therefore, of course, you can embrace it. That for him, it's about the turn from struggling with the questions of personal honesty versus society and the world and things like that, to the ability to just accept that this is who we are. Everything we understand is filtered through our subjective understanding. And I can just sort of accept that.
I think one way to think about the difference between them for Rav Shagar is he keeps coming back to freedom. I know you gave a shiur about this before Pesach. For the existentialist, is freedom is being true to yourself and your essence. In other words, there is an essential personality, talents that God gave me, and I have to spend my life uncovering who that is, what is unique about me, so to speak. I have a shlichut, I have a purpose. And for the postmodern thinker, since that whole, there's no objective in the first place, is I can just create my own meaning. I can yotzer myself, create myself, and I don't even need to be struggling with the question of what am I meant to be, who am I supposed to be, what are my unique talents. Whatever I want them to be, I could create them to be. So can maybe you elaborate a little bit about freedom for the existentialist for Rav Shagar, which I guess is the kind of Rav Kook for him he uses in that essay, and then the postmodern free person, which is I guess Rabbi Nachman in that piece.
Yeah. So in numerous pieces, really, Rav Shagar builds up different models of freedom. It was something that clearly he returned to over and over again, struggling with questions of what does it mean to be free, how are we free, what enables us to be free. And one of the things that he like comes upon at a certain point in time is he feels, he's talked a lot about the meaningfulness of yourself and the truth of who you are, and the importance of being sincere and conveying who you are, and that's very much a form of truth he aligns with Rav Kook. For Rav Kook, freedom meant the form of freedom he aligned with Rav Kook. For Rav Kook, freedom meant expressing who you are inside, and that idea of who you are inside, Rav Shagar says, can become a prison. That if you don't feel it and it just becomes an idea, I have to be this person, even if you felt it at some point in time, but you no longer identify with that in an honest way, then maintaining the idea you have to be true to that, and that's freedom, is not freedom, it's jail.
It would be like, thinking you were a musician when you were younger, and now that narrative is your identity. I guess I have to be a musician. Now, I don't want to be a musician anymore, but I have to be. In other words, you're stuck in that narrative, this is who I am. So it's amazing how, again, he does this. It's because you would think, that's the deepest, which is I'm a musician, so now I have to follow my purpose. And he's saying, well, maybe that isn't even the deepest.
Yeah. So what he sees as a higher level, that he calls a sort of mystical freedom, is the recognition that maybe there isn't a really fixed who I am, a self inside me that I have to be true, to which I have to be true. And instead, I have the ability to create myself and create, the structures of meaning that I find around me. And he says the difference between he and his approach to the postmodernist, sort of postmodern freedom or pluralism and things, is the ability to say, I can make something of significance. I can decide to be someone. I can decide to be religious, is his example. He's like, I'm going to make myself based on the Torah. And that self I've created can be significant, can matter. And the ability to believe that God wants us to create things, that God gave us the ability to make things that matter, is for him a really postmodern development. That he thinks there's a sense of not just accepting God's reality, but that God wants us to create reality in significant ways, is a very important development for him.
I remember when you and I have learned from Rav David Aaron, who has written many amazing books on Kabbalah, and he's deeply influenced by Rav Kook. And Rav David Aaron, he used to always have this metaphor. You remember about the toaster? Yeah. About like a toaster, can't be a CD player. He can only be a toaster. And therefore, that was the metaphor. The message was, you're a Jew. Mitzvah are the only thing possible for you. They're the only thing that could, make you happy. And if they don't make you happy, well, that's just you. That's your own fault. And I guess what is exciting about Rav Shagar is it kind of looks at that belief and kind of says that might have been true for Rav Kook, like what you said before. But is it true for you? Meaning it's just let's be honest. Stop being, it's a beautiful idea, it's a great metaphor, but is it real? Does it feel like that? And instead of saying no, it doesn't feel like, therefore get rid of Torah mitzvah, he's saying choose, make it a choice. And that's the kind of freedom of postmodernism, which is I can choose to make the Torah and Judaism my identity without having to delude myself that it is my core.
Right. I think there's something very powerful, and Rav Shagar is struck by the power of saying, this is who I am, and I'm going to express who I am, and that's going to look like Torah and mitzvot. But the problem is that true? Like, do I feel Torah and mitzvot deep inside me crying to come out? And when I do Torah and mitzvot, do I feel like I'm expressing myself? Or does it feel like I'm, maybe doing something important, meaningful, etc., but not necessarily who I am? And does the attempt to say that it's who I am in a situation where it doesn't feel like it, like what does that do to you? And does it create feelings of guilt? Do you feel trapped? Things like that. And so Rav Shagar really allows you to move from a model where what's important is expressing yourself to the ability to create something important, and to choose Judaism and mitzvot and let that be important and sufficient.
It's so powerful to me because I think it's funny how like Hasidut and kind of mysticism has become the norm of at least like the Orthodox world. But I still think even, there's renewal Judaism, conservative Judaism, Reform. It's kind of everywhere now. So it's funny how like that used to be the most exciting and kind of intellectually, exciting thing to think about, which is, be true to yourself, follow your essence. And today, it's kind of like you said, it can become not only a trap, like a prison, but you're lying to people. And again, someone who feels like that and feels like Torah Mitzvot is their essence and everything, that's one thing, and I'm not going to put them down. But for a lot of people struggling with the search for meaning, rather they don't want to live Torah Mitzvot, or I think anything that is based on like a false premise, that they're lying to themselves. And it's much more exciting to do something that I have chosen, because I believe, and it feels good when I choose it. And sometimes it doesn't feel amazing, but I have made that choice for myself. I have achrayut, responsibility in my life, and nobody forced me into it, not even my own soul, in a strange way, meaning God didn't even force me into it. He's given me free will, and I think that's very, very exciting.
I agree, and I think it's worth noting that Rav Shagar will often make a sort of implied parallel between science and art or creativity, science fiction. That he sees what he calls, the modern religion as very much based around science as the ultimate form of truth and reality, and that religion has to either conform to science or try and border off a little area where it's religion's domain and not science's domain. And he talks about Rav Soloveitchik and Professor Yishai Leibovitz as people who, working within this paradigm of science, talks about reality, and religion can either match science or religion talks about religion. And he really feels that science is not as important as we think it is. He wouldn't, I think, deny, the place of science in the natural world and things, but he doesn't think we have to base our lives around scientific fact. That in a sense, the idea of I'm going to, do Torah Mitzvot because they express who I am, is saying there's a fact about reality very much in the model of science, even if science couldn't perceive it. And that fact is, my essence, my core, who I am, and religion's gonna match that. He says, no, religion is not like science. Religion is like art.
Yeah.
Religion is the ability to create something that matters.
Yeah.
And the ability for that to be, Judaism and my embrace of religion and my making Judaism who I am, is a really incredible creative idea for Rav Shagar.